Just a short while back, the United Nations Security Council met. What for? To discuss Russian aggression near Ukraine. Here's what's been happening. Over the weekend, the Russians started moving blood supplies to the front. And this is significant. Russia has been setting up supply lines of all kinds, medical units, fuel, and now blood supplies, something that would be critical during war. Ukraine says this information is not true. But the West is not taking Russia's moves lightly. Look at the build-up at the border. Moscow is boosting troop levels. It has surrounded Ukraine. The Russians are stationed on all four sides of the country now. The biggest deployment is on the Russia-Ukraine border. In fact, the build-up started here. But now Russia has deployed soldiers everywhere. They're in Crimea, a region that Russia annexed in 2014. They're in Moldova. Russian forces have around 100 troops there. They're also in the north, inside Belarus, and dangerously close to the Ukrainian border. How many Russian soldiers are we talking about? One estimate says there are 106,000 ground troops and 21,000 Navy and Air Force personnel. Russia also has separatists inside Ukraine, 15,000 of them believed to be in two regions, Luhansk and Donetsk. In fact, people are leaving Donetsk. This region looks like a ghost town. People have left because they fear they could be becoming targets of shelling. They have a good reason to be worried. Russian soldiers have been conducting drills. Today, Russia's northern fleet was in action. They conducted anti-submarine drills in the Norwegian Sea. World leaders are putting pressure on Moscow, starting with the United States. The Biden administration is planning to slap what they call bold sanctions. Reports say they'll target foreign lending to Russia and sales of sovereign bonds. They will block technologies for critical industries and assets of elite citizens close to Vladimir Putin. Here's how one report described the proposals. Washington is looking to take a sledgehammer to pillars of Russia's financial system. Sanctions will certainly hurt Russia, but they've hardly been effective as deterrents. The US has called for the Security Council session. In fact, they did call for the session today. They tried to drum up support of the global community against what they call Russian aggression. Listen to this.
We have had numerous meetings. Over 100 meetings over the course of the past few weeks, both with Russian officials and in consultations with our European and Ukrainian colleagues. All of these meetings have been in private. We think it's now time to have a meeting in public and have this discussed in a public forum.
Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is sending a warning to the Russian president. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will speak to President Vladimir Putin this week, and here is what he plans to tell him.
Well, what I will say to the President Putin, as I've said before, is that I think we really all need to step back from the brink, and I think Russia needs to step back from the brink. I think that an invasion of Ukraine and any incursion into Ukraine beyond the territory that Russia has already taken in 2014 would be an absolute disaster for the world, but above all it would be a disaster for Russia.
Step back from the brink, he said. The British government is bringing a legislation. The new law will allow London to slap targeted sanctions on Russia, more specifically Russian banks, energy companies and oligarchs close to the Kremlin. Moscow sees this move as a threat.
You know, these are very alarming statements from London. I think it is alarming not only for us and Russian companies. It demonstrates that London is really unpredictable. And it is a reason for certain consideration for international financial and business structures.
Russia also had strong words for the United States at the UNSC. Its ambassador tried to block the meeting on Ukraine and accused America of what they call megaphone diplomacy.
Furthermore, the open format for discussion proposed by the US on this extremely sensitive topic is making this a classic example of megaphone diplomacy. Rather, we fully understand that the desire of our American colleagues to whip up hysterics regarding its own situations, regarding the so-called Russian act of aggression, is something that they want to do, including within the Security Council from this rostrum.
So the US and the UK are willing to take on Russia. What about the rest of Europe? or Europe for that matter. Russian troops are on their doorstep, but the bloc remains divided. Even NATO is not willing to put boots on the ground. It has no plans to send soldiers to Ukraine.
We have no plans to deploy NATO combat troops to Ukraine. NATO allies have trainers there. We help them from NATO with building capacity, modernizing their defenses, including their cyber defenses. NATO allies also provide equipment, defensive weapons, like the UK has now provided, for instance, anti-tank weapons.
So Ukraine will get assistance, but will it have to fight Russia alone? Residents of Kiev are already preparing for that. Ukrainian veterans are holding training camps inside the city. Yesterday, hundreds of volunteers gathered at a training ground in Kiev. They were there to learn combat skills, like how to handle a rifle.
Not everyone is supposed to. We don't have a military country. Not everyone is supposed to be military. Not everyone is supposed to know how to shoot, to run, to be a professional. But unfortunately, in the current reality, this is what the circumstances dictate to us. To at least know on an elementary level how to stop blood loss, how to behave during shelling.
So this is what Ukraine is gearing up for. There is a constant fear of invasion. Can diplomacy avert a war? Tomorrow, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will speak to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. So far, these leaders have failed to deliver truce. There's little to suggest that the next phone call will be a game changer. The only plus is that they're still talking. We'll keep track. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.